Well, for me, the whole story is about everything crumbling, emotionally, mentally, physically, obviously, with the house. And it looks at a story about how this family is going to be able to overcome the challenges that they have and overcome that crumble of the house and the emotions and physically in the relationship. I think the grieving process is going to be different for each person. We all grieve differently. Some of us grieve right in the moment. Some of us may take years. So given that this situation was just a year later, actually to me it's not that long of a period. I have a patient whose father died in an accident, and it took him 4 years before he could really let himself believe in that and go through the process at his father's death anniversary. So I think, the time span, it really depends on how each of us process emotions and how each of us cope with difficulties and tragedies and traumas. Another aspect, what happened here was the interdependence between the mother and the child. Oftentimes, how we grieve also depends on how open our family members are, our friends are, in discussing and talking about it. And in this play, the mother wasn't really prepared to talk about it, and it sounded more like Janice was ready to talk about it, wanted to go through the grieving process. And it was the mother who wasn't ready. Sorry. I think we need to distinguish the difference between humor, healthy humor, and sarcasm, which can be as a form of denial. I think that with classic hoarders, denial isn't really their core symptom. What their core symptom is that they really don't have an awareness. Their insight is very low. That, for example, Barbara was hoarding 57 cats. Yes. To her, she actually believes that she needs to take care of these cats, that these cats depend on her, they may not have a better home, that she really loves them, and she probably does have that emotional attachment, because many hoarders do have emotional attachments, especially for animal hoarders. They do have that emotional attachment. However, it's not necessarily a denial. It's more of they have a lack of insight into the problem itself, which is one person cannot care for 57 cats. I don't care who you are.
Right.
So, it's not necessarily a denial. Now, I know that hoarders also have, hoarders tend to have experienced trauma. For Barbara, it seems like the trauma centered somewhere around your not being able to have children and the emotional hurt and a lot of animal hoarders, they grew up in homes where the attachment style to the parents are inconsistent. So hoarders can come from abusive families, can come from neglectful families, and because of that, they don't have that emotional attachment, and they find that emotional attachment to their objects.
But they're like functional in life other than that?
No, they're not. No. One of the main
jobs and stuff, or
most hoarders do not have jobs. Most hoarders do not.
How do they pay for them?
Right, they can't. Most hoarders are on welfare. They're using their welfare checks to pay for all the food you have to buy, for the fancy feast, all the fancy feast you have to buy. One of the classic symptoms of hoarders is that they have difficulty with information processing. So they have difficulty with their attention, memory, categorization, decision making. And a lot of hoarders, they are at a point where they're so debilitated that they're not able to hold down jobs. And
why am I listening to her? Why am I listening to anything Robert says? Okay.
I don't know.
Usually hoarders will not allow people into their homes. In fact, they tend to be very isolated people, not having a lot of friends. They're usually ashamed and embarrassed about their homes, and yeah, it wouldn't be typical for even family members to go into a hoarder's home. First of all, I think it's really important for us to learn from our emotions. So mistakes are always going to happen. And it's about how you learn from that mistake and how you grow from that mistake. And if you are feeling guilty over something, it would be important for you to be able to learn from it rather than holding on to it and beating yourself up each time, because that is just a waste of energy. And to channel that energy into learning from whatever mistake occurred and growing from it, becoming a better person, becoming a stronger person. And that is basically what evolution is, right? As we get older, we get wiser. However, that's because we evolve. We learn from our past mistakes and our past errors. I think that for guilt. Well, usually Barbara wouldn't want to come into treatment. Right? It's usually her family who's pushing her into treatment. And again, that has a lot to do with the lack of insight that the hoarder, doesn't have insight into the problem, and they feel like what they're doing is justified. So it's an intervention that usually takes place where the family members really sit down with the sufferer and talk to her about how she's not only ruining her life, however, she's ruining her family member's life. She's causing, for example, a hoarder can lose their home. There are safety concerns, fire hazards. Your homeowner's insurance even goes up. You have more of a difficult time getting insured. You can risk the possibility of losing your children. So there's also health hazards as well. If your home is infested with feces and dead animals, there's a whole load of health hazards. And it's really important to bring those aspects to the hoarder's attention and really appeal to their emotions rather than doing the finger pointing and blaming and shooting. So it really is dependent upon the family to bring that person in. The hoarding behavior starts pretty young. Usually by the time they are 12 to 15, they're already having collections of stuff. When the child is young, parents are the persons who can say, no, you can only have so many things. So it's rarely identified in younger children, although it does exist in children as young as 3. And usually it's not identified until the person has so many things that they're unable to use their bathroom for their bathroom, use their microwave to heat up food. However, the reason why a hoarder, even though if they have that insight, they're not able to separate from their items is because they have such an emotional attachment to their material. And that emotional attachment, the way that I like to explain it, because I don't think a lot of people understand how difficult it is for a hoarder to separate with with his or her things, it's almost like breaking up with your loved one again and again and again. Each time you're discarding an item, it's going through that breakup again and again. And this is the emotional attachment that hoarders have to their objects, which is why just because they have the insight, they still have that emotional attachment, and it's still very difficult for them to get rid of their things. Also, by the time a hoarder gets into treatment, they're usually so set in their ways. And again, I was saying earlier that with a hoarder, they do have information processing difficulties, that by the time they're 40s and 50s and 60s, they're just not capable, or they have a harder time understanding the cognitive methods, the tools that we give them, and apply that to discarding their items, making quick decisions about what needs to be kept, what needs to be discarded, having a place for everything. They just don't have that cognitive capacity as well as we would for those of us who are not hoarders. I wish it was that simple though. It will make my job a lot easier.
The grief journey model that I like to follow is from Dr. J. William Gordon, and it says that every griever has to go through 4 tasks, and the first task is accepting the reality that the person has actually died. So every first holiday or first event that happens is a new, every time the person goes to pick up the phone and the person's not there, or the place setting is empty at the holiday table, that is part of that accepting the reality. And then right along with that is experiencing, task number 2, experiencing the pain of the death. So we often try to take medicine, overshop, overeat, over whatever to try to numb out the pain instead of actually experiencing the pain. Because we in America, we don't really like pain. I don't know if you knew that. So we try to get over it as quickly as possible. And the healing comes from experiencing the pain, the guilt, the sadness, and processing through it. So that's the second task. The third task is adjusting to life without that person. So every role that person played in the life, so whether it's the cleaning of the house or fixing things, you know, who can you hire to fix something? Which one of your friends has a husband or a wife that's really crafty and can come over and fix things or something like that? So who's going to do those roles? And then the fourth task is reinvesting in life while still memorializing the loved one. So in the old days, Freud used to say, take everything down off the walls, move, you know, reinvest in life, get over it, basically. And what we like to say now is that closure is for bank accounts, not for love accounts. And that instead you have to find a balance between honoring the deceased person and investing in the life around you. So that's that. And then every holiday that comes is this mix of dealing with the empty place setting, the traditions that are no longer there, who bakes the pie, who brings the jam, who buys the cool toys, who does the Christmas wrapping, whatever role that person plays, as well as just a general lack of interest in anything that brings pleasure or just things don't feel as good anymore. So do I really want to go to Aunt Susie's house when my mom's not going to be there anymore? And those kinds of holiday things come up regardless of the time of year that someone has died.